I spent 6 months building her up in my head before I ever said a word to her. Emma worked at the coffee shop 2 blocks from my apartment. Not just any coffee shop. One of those places where the baristas actually remember your order and the Wi-Fi doesn't cut out every 10 minutes. I am a freelance graphic designer, so I basically lived there. And every Tuesday and Thursday morning, there she was. She had this way of tucking her hair behind her ear when she concentrated on the espresso machine. She'd bite her lower lip slightly when she was creating latte art. She wore vintage band t-shirts, The Smiths, Joy Division, Mazzy Star, bands I actually listened to. She had a small tattoo of a constellation on her wrist that I convinced myself had to mean something deep. I know how this sounds. I do. But understand, I wasn't some creepy stalker. I just noticed things. She'd read during slow periods, always paperback novels with worn spines. She had a different notebook every few weeks, filled with what looked like sketches or writing. She seemed thoughtful, creative, different from the endless stream of influencer types saturating Brooklyn. My best friend Marco called it building a fantasy. He wasn't wrong, but I didn't care. "You've created an entire person in your head," he told me one night over beers. "You don't know anything real about her. I know she's not basic. I know she's got depth. You know she makes your coffee and looks hot doing it. That's literally all you know." I ignored him. Because here's what I'd convinced myself. When you recognize someone's soul through small moments, through the art they wear and the books they read, you know them better than most people who actually talk to them. I'd built this whole narrative where Emma was this misunderstood artist, probably feeling stuck in a service job, dreaming of something more, waiting for someone who actually saw her. Spoiler alert, I was catastrophically wrong. The turning point came on a random Wednesday. She was restocking the pastry case when her coworker called in sick. The shop got slammed, and I watched her handle the chaos with this calm efficiency that made me like her even more. When things finally died down, I was the only customer left. "Survivor's reward," she said, sliding me a free brownie. "Thanks for being patient." That voice. I'd heard her take orders 1,000 times, but never directed at me like this. Warm, a little raspy, with this hint of humor. "The chaos is half the charm of this place," I managed, trying to sound casual and probably failing. She laughed. Actually laughed. First person to ever say that. Most people lose their minds if their latte takes more than 3 minutes. We talked for maybe 15 minutes. She asked what I was working on. I had my tablet out with a logo design. Turned out she did watercolors in her spare time. She loved the neighborhood. She was saving money to maybe travel next year. It felt like confirmation. Like the universe was finally aligning. "I'm here most mornings," I said as I was leaving, heart hammering. "If you ever want to grab coffee somewhere you don't have to make it." She smiled. God, that smile. And said, "I'd like that." I texted Marco immediately. "Told you she was different." His response, "Or you're about to learn a very expensive lesson about projection." I should have listened. Date 1 happened 4 days later. I suggested this bookstore cafe in Williamsburg. Intimate, artsy, the kind of place I imagined she'd love. I got there early, ordered us a table by the window, had conversation topics mentally prepared. She showed up 15 minutes late wearing a crop top that said, "Manifest your reality," in glittery letters. Not vintage band tees, not the understated aesthetic I'd built in my head. Sorry, she said, dropping into the chair. "My roommate was having a crisis about her ex's new girlfriend's Instagram story. You know how it is." I didn't, but I smiled. "No problem." She immediately pulled out her phone. "Oh my God, I have to show you this TikTok that's so relevant to manifestation and coffee synchronicity." I watched a 30-second video about divine timing while she narrated over it. "See, this is literally us. The universe put you in my coffee shop." Or I needed caffeine and it was close to my apartment, I joked. She blinked at me. "That's such a Capricorn thing to say." "I'm a Virgo." Even worse. She laughed, but I couldn't tell if she was serious. The next hour was disorienting. Every topic I brought up, books, art, travel, she'd somehow pivot to astrology, manifesting, or her journey of becoming her highest self. The worn paperbacks I'd seen her read, mostly self-help about vibrational frequency and attracting abundance. "I'm actually a spiritual life coach. The coffee shop is just for grounding energy and meeting people. Everything's about energy, you know? Like, your aura right now is very, cyan, maybe teal. Is that good? It means you're in transition, probably resisting your calling." My calling, apparently, was to recognize this date was not going how I had imagined. But here's the thing. Of investment. I'd spent 6 months building this fantasy. I wasn't ready to let it collapse after 90 minutes. Maybe she was just nervous. Maybe I was seeing the surface and needed to dig deeper. "This was fun," I said as we left. "Want to do it again?" "Totally! The universe definitely wants us to align more." I texted Marco. It was different, but good different. His response, "You're doing the thing where you twist reality to fit your fantasy." Date 2 was my idea. A gallery opening in Chelsea. Art. Culture. Something that would bring out the depth I knew she had. She showed up in head-to-toe white. "I'm trying to channel pure intention this week," she explained. The gallery featured abstract expressionism, bold, emotional pieces that actually moved me. I stood in front of a massive canvas, genuinely affected by the raw vulnerability of it. "What do you think?" I asked Emma. She glanced at it for maybe 3 seconds. "It's giving chaotic energy. The artist probably has unhealed childhood trauma." She pulled out her phone. "This lighting is perfect, though. Can you take my picture?" I took 7 photos. Then she took 4 more with her phone. Then she made me retake 3 because the angle wasn't right. "This is going to get so much engagement," she murmured, already typing a caption. Something about art activating my divine feminine. I tried redirecting to the actual art. She'd nod, say something about energy, then drift back to her phone. At dinner afterward, I learned several things. She'd never actually traveled, but she had a vision board about Bali. Her watercolors were exclusively of crystals and moon phases, which she sold on Etsy for spiritual awakening. She had 17,000 Instagram followers and checked her notifications compulsively. Her last 3 relationships ended because the guys couldn't handle her authenticity. "I'm just really evolved," she explained. "Most people are still operating from ego. I'm trying to live from soul." "What does that mean practically?" I asked. "Like, I don't do drama. If something doesn't serve me, I just remove it from my reality." "What if it's something you need to work through?" She looked at me like I'd suggested eating glass. That's such a trauma response, holding on to things that lower your vibration. The check came. She didn't reach for it. When I paid, she said, "You're such a provider, very divine masculine energy." I went home confused. Marco called. "How'd it go?" "I don't know," I admitted. She's not, she's beautiful and she's interesting, but she's not the person you invented. She's just different than I expected." "So, end it." "I'm seeing her again Friday." Silence. Then, "Why?" "Good question." The truth? I'd invested so much imagination in this that admitting I was completely wrong felt like failure, like I'd wasted 6 months on a mirage. And maybe, if we had one more date, something would click. Maybe I'd see what I'd originally seen. Date 3 started at a rooftop bar she chose. Expensive cocktails, Instagram perfect skyline views. She arrived with a ring light. For content, she explained, this golden hour is literally perfect. We didn't have a conversation. We had a photo shoot where I was occasionally asked to participate. Between shots, she talked about her plans to monetize her spiritual coaching, an argument with her roommate about shared bath products, a guy who DM'd her that morning who didn't respect her energy, and why she needed to manifest a high-value man who understood her worth. "What do you look for in a partner?" I finally asked. She thought about it. "Someone successful, emotionally available but not needy, tall, good Instagram aesthetic, like I need someone who won't ruin my feed vibe, generous, spiritually conscious, and they have to let me have my freedom while also being totally committed." That's a lot of specifics. "I know my worth," she said simply. "I'm not settling for less than I deserve." "What do you offer in return?" The question seemed to surprise her. I mean, I'm me. I bring my energy, my authenticity, my spiritual practice. Not everyone can handle that level of consciousness. Something in me finally broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just this quiet realization that I'd been in love with a character I'd written, not an actual human. The girl I had imagined, thoughtful, creative, maybe a little shy, didn't exist, had never existed. Emma was real, sure. She was a person with her own thoughts and priorities and way of seeing the world, but she was profoundly self-absorbed. Every conversation circled back to her image, her manifestations, her spiritual journey. She'd never once asked me about my work beyond that first coffee shop conversation. Didn't know what I cared about. Didn't seem curious. She was beautiful, yeah, and confident. But depth? The soulful connection I'd imagined? That was all in my head. If you're hooked on where this went, subscribe for more stories that'll make you question everything you think you know about attraction. Anyway, back to my crashing reality. "I need to be honest," I said carefully. "I don't think we're looking for the same things." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I think I built up an idea of who you were before I actually knew you. That's on me, but I don't think we're compatible." Her expression shifted, not hurt, but annoyed. "This is because I didn't offer to split the checks, isn't it? I told my roommate guys get weird about that." "It's not about money. Because if you can't provide without expecting something in return, that's very transactional energy. I need someone who gives freely." "Emma, I don't think you've asked me a single question about myself across 3 dates." She looked genuinely confused. "You're a graphic designer. You live in Brooklyn. What else do I need to know?" And there it was, the confirmation that I'd been having a relationship with my imagination while she'd been doing whatever this was. "I think we should just call this," I said carefully. "No hard feelings." She stared at me for a long moment, then shrugged. "Your loss. The universe will send me someone better aligned with my journey." She gathered her ring light and left. Didn't offer to split the tab for her 3 cocktails. I sat there alone, watching the sunset I'd barely looked at because I'd been so focused on the train wreck of my expectations versus reality. Marco called an hour later. I told him everything. "I'm not saying I told you so," he said. "Please do. I deserve it." "You do, but here's the thing. Everyone does this to some degree. You just went full delusion." "Thanks." No, listen, you fell in love with potential, with mystery, with the version of her you wanted to exist. It's not actually about her being awful. She was pretty awful. Okay, she was vapid as hell, but you would have found a way to be disappointed no matter what. Because real people can't compete with fantasies. He was right. The Emma I had imagined was perfect because I controlled her character. I wrote her personality based on band t-shirts and coffee-making focus. I filled in all the gaps with exactly what I wanted. Real Emma, influencer coach manifestation girl Emma, never stood a chance. Here's what I learned and what this whole disaster taught me about attraction. Crushes from a distance are safe. You get to project everything you want onto someone without the messy reality of who they actually are. You build them up with limited information, filling gaps with your ideal traits. It's not really about them, it's about what you need them to be. And the second they become real, the second they reveal their actual personality, priorities, and quirks, the fantasy collapses. Not because they're necessarily terrible, but because they're human, flawed, different from what you imagined. In Emma's case, yeah, we were incompatible on every level, but even if she'd been lovely, she would have disappointed me in some way, because I'd set her up to be a manic pixie dream girl who validated my taste and understood my soul. That's not how people work. Real connection requires actual curiosity, asking questions, being genuinely interested in who someone is, not who you hope they'll be. It means accepting that they might not fit your aesthetic or your narrative. They might have flaws that annoy you or values that clash with yours. The crush I had on Coffee Shop Emma was comfortable because it demanded nothing of me. I could admire from afar, make up stories, feel the excitement of potential without any of the risk of reality. But that's not romantic intelligence. That's fantasy. And fantasy doesn't teach you anything about actual relationships. 3 months later, I'm back at the coffee shop. Emma quit, moved to LA to pursue content creation full-time, according to her replacement. I hope she finds whatever she's looking for, genuinely. And me? I've learned to be suspicious of crushes that last too long without conversation. If I can spend 6 months watching someone without talking to them, I'm probably not attracted to them. I'm attracted to the story I'm telling myself. Real attraction happens when you know someone and like them anyway. When you see their flaws and quirks and human messiness and think, yeah, this works for me. It's less cinematic than love at first sight, less poetic than recognizing someone's soul through the music on their t-shirt. But it's real. And real is harder, messier, and ultimately more meaningful than any fantasy I could write. The barista who replaced Emma is nice, makes good coffee. I know nothing about her except that she's efficient and professional. And you know what? I'm keeping it that way. What would you have done differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments.